Hello YouTube, welcome to Technically Speaking. Today we will be building a website using HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap to create a responsive product page. And you can find the source code for this site in the description below. We will begin with a blank HTML template and connect Bootstrap using a href link. We will of course begin with the navigation bar. Let's give it a class of expand-lg. This will make sure it takes up the whole width of the page, as well as a fixed top. This means that it's anchored to the top of the page, even when scrolling down. Lastly, add uppercase, making sure all text is capital letters. Now we move on to the container. Add a class brand, as well as a logo. Add the class brand, as well as a logo. Then add a class of navbar. Then add a class of brand, as well as a logo. Then add a button class of navbar. Follow this with a button class of navbar toggler. Follow this with a button class of navbar toggler. Then add a type of button. Then add a data toggler of collapse and a span class toggler and a span class toggle icon, which will make the hamburger icon appear on mobile devices. Follow this up with a class of navbar collapse. This means on mobile screens, the navigation bar will slide out. Let's add a few A classes, which will serve as our links. Home, features, prices, and blogs. You can customize these to whichever you like. You can customize these to your pages. Add px-lg for rounded. This will make the edges round. Now close our divs and our nav class. Next is our main section. We will call this main. Let's add py-5 and a container class to hold this together. Add a div class of col-lg-6 to span half the width of the page. Let's add a header h3 and a text, welcome to my portfolio, or whatever you like. Let's add a couple of buttons with class mt-5, and I will add a value of get a personal quote, or customize this to whatever you like. Finally, we will close these sections. Next, let us create the about section. So let's add the class about. Now we will add an about class. Within that, a container class, and within that, a row class. Now add div class col-lg-5, which will span just under half the width of the page. Now, let's add an image and give it a class of image fluid. This means that it will be responsive on mobile devices. We will add a div class of col-lg-7. This will take up the remaining space on the page. Now let's add some custom text. Now we will add a header h1 and a p tag with a class of bold to emphasize the text. Now let's close this section tag. Now let's create a progress bar section. Now let's create a class of progress. Add my-3. This will create margin for the top and bottom. Now add a class of ProValue1, a p tag and a span class styled white, and a class of ProValue1, a p tag, and a span tag, so the text is styled white and floated to the right. Next, add your chosen percentage number. This will show the colored bar right up until your percentage point. Your progress bar can be tailored to measure skills for a job, tax and profits for a company, or sales of your product in various countries. Next, we can add some buttons with a class MT-5. This will give it a margin top. I will type download resume. Feel free to customize your text. Lastly, close the divs and close the section class. In the About Me section, I'll create a bio for my background. Let's copy and paste this progress bar another 3 times. Our next section will be services. This section will be used to showcase our services. First, create a container class to hold our cards. Now, add a header h1 with a text class center, followed by a row class. Next, let's create a div class card for the outer layer and a second card for the body. Now, let's add another div with a class of circle and add a span class for font awesome icon. Now, let's add a h4 tag to name the type of service and add pb-2 to give padding bottom 2 all the way down to the third closing div. Copy and paste this a further 2 times, then close the divs. The next section we create will be the portfolio section. This section will be used to highlight our projects. Let's begin with another section class. Add a container class with a h2 header, text center pb-2 for padding bottom 2. Add a title to the portfolio. I will call this Works. Let's add a div class control. We will add a UL tag for unordered list and fill it with list items. Add LI tags. Let's call them logos, social media, and websites. Let's add another row with large LG-4 and add an item div. Let's add another image and give it a class of image fluid and add some alt texts. We will add another span class, FA space FA dash plus from our Google Fonts list. Let's give it a span class, FA space FA dash plus from our Google font list. Feel free to customize these. Now, we'll close these divs. Next, highlight and copy these divs. Copy and paste them 5 times. Let's close these divs and close the section. Now, we'll make a section called blog posts. We've almost finished the HTML. In our blog post, we'll create another section called blog. Add another container class, a row class, and a column LG-4 class. As usual, create a div section. Call this contact. Add py-5, P for padding, Y for the axis, so top and bottom. Add another container. Give this a class of text center. Add contact us. Add another P for padding, Y for axis, 5. Add a class of col-md-10. Now, add another row class and another div class of col-md-4 and another div class of circle. Copy and paste this a further 2 times. Fill this with paragraph tags of your address, phone number, email, and social media accounts. There you have it. The HTML section is now complete. We will move on to the CSS styling. Next, let's add the CSS styling. First, we'll begin with the main and but2 class. We will give this a height of 55 pixels and a width of 138 pixels and a background transparent. We'll make the font color green, add no outline, and a 1 pixel solid yellow border. Make the font weight bold and a 5 pixel border radius. Let's move on to main and button2 hover class. A background color of purple, a transition of 0.5 seconds, and font color white. The about image will have a box shadow of 5 pixels, 4 pixels, 29 pixels, and -14 pixels, and the color black. Now, we will design the H1 and progress bars to view this type of animation. Make it big 3 rem and a font weight of 900 to make it big and bold. Let's style the progress bars. Give it a background color of tomato and justify content to flex start. Let's give them a border radius of 14 pixels, align the items to the center, and give it a display of flex. Add a height of 25 pixels and a width of 100%. Onto the Pro Value class, we will give it an animation of 3 seconds, normal, and forward. These keyframes are what create the animation of the progress bar. Choose between 0 and 93%. So it fills up from the left. Copy and paste this a further 3 times. Each time adjusting the percentage so the width changes. Feel free to customize your percentages to showcase your prowess. Now, add a border radius of 50 pixels, a background color of black, a height of 25 pixels, and a width of 0. Progress P class. Give this a color of white and a padding of 12 pixels. The card div will start with no border, no outline, a box shadow. We will position it bottom left and give it a color of black. Then the card P tag will have a color of grey. Moving on, we will make the circle div a height and width of 70 pixels and a color of white. The text color will be black. Now let's give it a padding of 12 pixels. The display will be an inline block. The font size will be 30 pixels and give it a margin bottom of 20 pixels and a font color of white and a transition of 0.5 seconds. Now, next in the portfolio area, start with a control unordered list and list item. A list style of none will remove the bullet points. A background color of black, a padding top and bottom of 5 pixels, left and right 15 pixels, and a color of white. A display of inline block will make them appear in a row. A cursor of pointer, so when the mouse moves over it, and a letter spacing of 2 pixels. Then give it a hover style of box shadow, -5 pixels, 0.1 pixels, 62 pixels, -22 pixels. Color 0.0.0.75. Copy and paste this a further 2 times, adding a prefix of Moz and another for WebKit. Finish with a transition of 0.5 seconds. Next, the item span class. Let's give this a position of absolute, a top of 40% and left 45%. This will give it a space above and to the left. Make the font size 40 pixels. Add a cursor pointer and opacity 0. Let's give the item a hover span. We will make the opacity 1 and the transition 0.5 seconds. Next, the class of item before, a content of 2 empty quotes and a top of 0 and a left of 0. Add a height and width of 100%. Let's give it a background color of Alice blue, an opacity of 0 and a position of absolute. Then the item before hover will be a opacity of 1 and a transition of 0.5 seconds. Now the circle hover class. Let's give this a background color of black. Transition 0.5 seconds and font color white. Now, content button 3 class. Background color of black, a font color of white, outline none, border none, height of 40 pixels, width of 140 pixels, and a border radius of 4 pixels. A height of 40 pixels, a width of 140 pixels, and a border radius of 4 pixels. Button 3 hover class will give a background of transparent, a font color of black, a border of 1 pixel solid black, transition 0.4 seconds. And lastly, the footer class. Let's give this a background color of black and a font color of white. And there you have it, a fully responsive front-end Bootstrap website. Feel free to customize this. And if you found this video helpful or informative, please consider liking and subscribing. I shall see you in the next one. Happy coding!